There is one detail from the drone footage of Nancy Guthrie's property that has barely been discussed. One detail that most people walked right past. A former FBI evidence specialist, someone trained to read crime scenes the way a doctor reads an X-ray, noticed it immediately. It isn't the gate. It isn't the back entrance. It isn't anything that's been talked about in the comment sections, on the forums, or in the news coverage. It's the driveway. Specifically, the front circular driveway. And what this expert found there, or more precisely, what she did not find, may be the most important unanswered question in this entire investigation. Because if she's right, and her credentials suggest she is, the window to preserve a critical piece of physical evidence may have already closed. Permanently. Stay with me. Because this matters. For those who are new here, Nancy Guthrie is an elderly woman who disappeared from her home in Tucson, Arizona. What started as a missing persons case quickly escalated into something far more complex when drone footage of her property began circulating online, raising questions that investigators have not fully answered publicly. The FBI got involved. So did the Pima County Sheriff's Office. And by day 87 of the investigation, families, journalists, and true crime followers across the country were still waiting for answers. Reporter Brian Enton has been one of the most consistent ground-level voices covering this case, conducting interviews, following leads, and documenting what the official statements leave out. One of those interviews brought in someone whose professional eye caught something that deserved a much closer look. Her name is Morin O'Connell. And her background is not something you find in online comment sections. Morin O'Connell is a former special agent with the FBI's Evidence Response Team, the ERT. If you're not familiar with what the ERT does, here's the short version: they are not the agents who knock on doors. They are the ones called in when the margin for error is zero. When a scene needs to be processed with precision. When evidence is fragile, time-sensitive, and legally critical. O'Connell spent over 4 years on active crime scenes. Not behind a desk. Not in training simulations. At real scenes, working real evidence. Her training covers blood spatter analysis, latent fingerprint recovery, trace materials, digital evidence, and perhaps most relevant to what we're discussing today, impression analysis. Impression analysis is exactly what it sounds like. It's the forensic study of marks left behind by pressure, footwear, tools, and yes, tires. It's a discipline that requires understanding both the surface that received the impression and the object that created it. Done correctly, it can identify a vehicle class, a manufacturer, even a specific wear pattern unique to one car. O'Connell is not an online theorist. She is not anonymous. She is a named, credentialed professional who agreed to go on record, to speak analytically about what she observed in the publicly available drone footage of Nancy Guthrie's property. And when she looked at that footage, the first thing that pulled her attention was not what was moving. It was something that wasn't moving at all. She looked at the driveway. And she started counting tire tracks. Let's talk about this driveway. Nancy Guthrie's property features a front circular driveway, the kind that loops around and comes back out to the same road. They're common in older homes with larger lots. The design exists for convenience. A vehicle pulls in, comes around the loop, and exits without ever having to reverse. For a homeowner, it's practical. For someone with an entirely different purpose, it has a very specific tactical advantage. Enter. Act. Exit. No reversing. No hesitation. No wasted motion. The circular layout means a vehicle can arrive, do what it came to do, and leave in one fluid, forward motion. Now here's what O'Connell identified in the drone footage. She saw one set of tire impressions. A single track pattern on the decomposed granite surface of that driveway. Not two sets suggesting multiple vehicles. Not a chaotic overlap suggesting confusion or hasty movement. One controlled, deliberate arc, consistent with a single vehicle moving through the loop. Based on her professional assessment, and based on the available footage, O'Connell concluded that the vehicle used to transport Nancy Guthrie was likely positioned in that front circular driveway. That word, likely, is important. She is offering an expert interpretation of visible evidence. Not a confirmed fact. Not a conviction. An assessment from someone who has spent years reading exactly these kinds of scenes. But there's a layer to this that makes it more complex. Because the front driveway may not have been the original plan. There's a theory, and again, this is analytical reasoning, not confirmed information, that a dog belonging to a neighboring property may have begun barking. If someone had intended to use the rear of the property, that dog could have made that approach far too risky. Too much noise. Too much attention. A pivot to the front circular driveway would have been the natural fallback. Quieter. Faster. Out and gone. So the question becomes, did investigators know to look at that specific section of the driveway? And if they did, what did they find? To understand why this matters so much, you need to understand what decomposed granite actually is and why it behaves the way it does. Decomposed granite is not solid like concrete or asphalt. It's a loose, granular material, small pieces of weathered rock that pack together under pressure but never fully bind. Think of it like dry sand at the beach. Step into it with your foot and you'll leave a clear print. But come back an hour later, after wind or rain or another footstep nearby, and that print may already be gone. Tire impressions in decomposed granite follow the same logic. A vehicle rolling across it will leave a readable pattern, tread depth, tread design, track width. But those impressions are extremely fragile. One additional vehicle crossing the driveway can destroy them. One good gust of wind can soften the edges beyond usability. Time alone works against preservation. This is where a technique called oblique lighting becomes critical. Here's how it works. You take a light source, a portable lamp, a high-powered flashlight, and you position it almost parallel to the ground. Just barely off the surface. When the light schemes across the ground at that angle, it creates long shadows in every groove, every ridge, every indentation that the naked eye couldn't see in normal daylight. Invisible details become suddenly visible. Think of it like shining a flashlight across carpet at night. The fibers you couldn't see in the room light suddenly cast tiny shadows and reveal everything. And what tire impressions can reveal, when properly recovered, is significant. Vehicle type. Tire manufacturer. Tread category. Unique wear patterns from that specific tire. Those details can narrow a search to a vehicle class, then cross-reference that class against surveillance footage, then pull registration databases. A tire impression is not just a mark in the dirt. In the right hands, it's a thread that leads somewhere. So the question O'Connell was really asking is this: was that thread ever pulled? O'Connell reviewed the publicly available drone footage carefully. She watched for the standard signs of forensic evidence processing. Signs that a trained eye would immediately recognize. She was looking for technicians working at ground level, someone crouched down with oblique lighting sweeping the surface. She was looking for measurement scales placed alongside impressions for documentation. She was looking for systematic, methodical processing of that driveway. Based on what was publicly visible, she did not see those signs. Now, and this point is critical, O'Connell was clear. She explicitly acknowledged that forensic work may have been conducted before the drone footage was captured. It may have happened outside the recorded window entirely. She is not accusing investigators of failing to do their jobs. That is not her assessment, and it is not ours. What she is saying is narrower and more precise than that. Based on what the public can see in available footage, there is no visible confirmation that tire impression recovery was conducted in that specific area, during that window. And here is why the timing matters so much. Decomposed granite does not wait. Once a second vehicle crosses that driveway, the original impression changes. Once the wind picks up, the edges soften. Once it rains, the material shifts. Unlike concrete, unlike asphalt, there is no freezing the evidence in place. You either recover it in time, or you don't recover it at all. If that window was missed, even briefly, the information isn't hidden. It isn't filed away in an evidence room. It's erased. Permanently. Gone in the same way a sandcastle disappears when the tide comes in. So the question that O'Connell's analysis forces us to sit with is this: was the critical tire evidence at that front circular driveway ever preserved, or has it already been lost forever? The driveway is one piece of a much larger investigation. And it's important to zoom out and understand what else is in play, because this case has not gone cold. It is active, and there are other threads being pulled simultaneously. Approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's property, investigators located a black glove. Visually, it resembles a glove captured in the doorbell camera footage from the night in question. When the glove was processed, analysts found DNA, unknown male DNA. That sample was sent to a forensic laboratory in Florida for analysis, and it has been entered into CODIS. CODIS is the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, a national database that holds DNA profiles from convicted offenders, arrestees, and forensic evidence collected at crime scenes. When a new DNA sample is entered, the system runs it automatically against every profile in the database. If there is a match, investigators get a name. But what if there isn't a match? What if the person who left that DNA has never been convicted, never been arrested, never had their profile entered into the system? That's where genetic genealogy comes in. It's a method that has solved cold cases stretching back decades. Analysts take an unknown DNA profile and submit it to ancestry databases, platforms where millions of people have voluntarily uploaded their genetic information to trace family history. When a partial match surfaces, analysts build out a family tree, working outward from distant relatives to narrow the field down to a specific individual. It's painstaking. It takes time. But it has worked in cases where nothing else could. Meanwhile, the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team, known as CAST, has reportedly been analyzing cell tower data from the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Cell tower analysis doesn't record conversations. What it does record is location. Every time a phone pings a cell tower, it creates a timestamped data point mapping where that device was. If someone was near Nancy Guthrie's property that night with a phone in their pocket, that signal may already be on a map somewhere inside an FBI analysis room. 3 threads. The DNA. The genealogy. The cell data. Each one independent. Each one potentially leading somewhere. Any one of them could be the thread that changes everything. Let's come back to where we started. Morin O'Connell, a former FBI Evidence Response Team agent with years of active crime scene experience, reviewed publicly available drone footage of Nancy Guthrie's property and identified what may be one of the most significant overlooked details in this case. A single set of tire impressions on a decomposed granite surface. A circular driveway that allowed controlled entry and exit. And no publicly visible confirmation that those impressions were ever formally processed. 3 questions remain publicly unanswered as of today. Were tire impressions ever recovered from that front driveway, and if so, what did they show? Has the unknown male DNA from the black glove returned a match through CODIS, or is genetic genealogy now the path forward? And has the FBI CAST team's cell tower analysis produced a timeline that places any specific device at that location that night? Investigators may already have answers to all 3. They may not be public yet. Or they may still be working toward them. But one thing is certain. Nancy Guthrie deserves answers. Her family deserves answers. And the details that seem small, a driveway, a tire mark, a glove 2 miles away, those are exactly the kinds of details that have unlocked cases that looked impossible. Everything presented in this video is based on publicly available information and on-record statements from named professionals. No individual has been named or implied as a suspect. All expert analysis represents professional interpretation of available footage, not confirmed investigative findings. This channel presents information for educational and awareness purposes only. If you have any information related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please contact the Pima County Sheriff's Office or the FBI's tip line directly.